Chapter 5. The Open Window. "My aunt will be down presently, Mr. Nuttall," said a very self-possessed young girl of 15. "In the meantime, you must try and put up with me." Frampton Nuttall tried to say polite things to Mrs. Suppleton's niece to keep up a steady flow of conversation. Privately, he wondered whether these formal visits on total strangers would do much towards curing him. Actually, Mr. Nuttall was suffering from some nerve disease, and doctors had suggested a change of residence. So he decided to shift from London to a quiet village in the outskirts. His sister had given him some letters of introduction to the people she knew there. "You know many of the people round here, don't you?" asked the niece. "Hardly a soul," said Frampton.
My sister was staying here, some 4 years ago, and she knows some of the people here.
"Then you know practically nothing about my aunt?" pursued the self-possessed young lady.
Only her name and address,"
admitted Frampton. "Her great tragedy happened just 3 years ago," said the niece.
That would be after your sister had left. Her tragedy?
Asked Frampton. Somehow in this peaceful region, tragedies seemed out of place. "You may wonder why we keep that window wide open on a November afternoon," said the girl, indicating a large French window that opened onto a lawn.
But has that window got anything to do with the tragedy?
Said Frampton. "Out through that window, 3 years ago to a day, her husband and her 2 young brothers went off for their day's shooting. They never came back. In crossing the moor to their favorite duck shooting ground, they were all 3 engulfed in a treacherous piece of bog. It had been a dreadful wet summer, and places that were safe in other years gave way suddenly without warning. Their bodies were never found. That was the dreadful part of it. Poor aunt always thinks they'll come back one day. They and the little brown spaniel that was lost with them, and walk in at that window just as they used to do. That is why the window is kept open every evening till it is quite dark. Do you know, sometimes on quiet evenings like this, I almost get a creepy feeling that they will all walk in through window." She broke off with a shudder. It was a relief to Frampton when the aunt bustled into the room with apologies for being late. "I hope Vera has been amusing you," she said.
"She has been very interesting,"
said Frampton. "I hope you don't mind the open window, do you?" said Mrs. Suppleton. "My husband and brothers will be home directly from shooting, and they always come this way." She rattled on cheerfully about the duck shooting and the availability of ducks in the winter. To Frampton, it was all purely horrible. He made an effort to turn the talk onto a less ghastly topic. It was certainly an unfortunate coincidence that he should have paid a visit on this tragic anniversary.
"The doctors say I must have complete rest and avoid physical exercise,"
announced Frampton. "On the matter of diet, they are not so much in agreement." "No?" said Mrs. Suppleton. Then she suddenly brightened into alert attention, but not to what Frampton was saying. "Here they are last," she cried. "Just in time for tea." Frampton shivered slightly and turned towards the niece. The girl was staring out through the open window with horror in her eyes. In a shock of nameless fear, Frampton swung around in his seat and looked in the same direction. In the deepening twilight, 3 figures were walking across the lawn towards the window. They all carried guns under their arms, and one of them was burdened with a white coat over his shoulders. A tired brown spaniel kept close at their heels. Noiselessly, they neared the house. Frampton grabbed wildly at his stick and hat. The hall door, the driveway, the front gate were dimly noted steps in his headlong retreat. A cyclist coming along the road had to run into the hedge to avoid a collision.
"Here we are, my dear,"
said the bearer of the white coat.
"But who was that who ran out as we came in?"
"A strange man. Mr. Nuttall?" said Mrs. Suppleton.
"Could only talk about his illness," and dashed off without a word of goodbye or apology when you arrived. One would think he had seen a ghost. I think it was the spaniel."
"I think it was the spaniel," said Vera calmly. "He told me he had a horror of dogs. He was once hunted into a graveyard somewhere in India by a pack of pariah dogs. He had to spend the night in a newly dug grave with the creatures barking and snarling just above him. Enough to make anyone lose their nerve, isn't it?" Storytelling at short notice was a specialty.